In this video, we're going to talk about the 21 tips that I wish I learned when I was first starting out this sport. If you actually apply these tips to your game, you'll find steady improvement and you'll probably start beating those better players that you wish you could beat.
All right, tip number one, super important, and that is your paddle position. Lots of players coming into the game have no idea where to place their paddle. I like to say a good place to start, at least, is right in front of your navel, right in front of your belly button here. And from this camera, you can see just a little bit to the backhand. And this is really important because you are going to be getting a lot of fast balls at your body, and we want to make sure we protect our body first. So as we dink here, Kate and I are playing. Notice how I have this paddle back into that ready position right after every shot. And then if he speeds up, I'm ready here because I have my backhand slightly to the backhand here so that I can be ready for any attack.
Okay, tip number two is to widen your stance. I see way too many pickleball players just stand here like they're waiting in line for coffee. You need to make sure you are in this widened stance, which is a little bit wider than shoulder width apart, so I'm balanced and I can move my feet the way I need to when I start to have to move to balls.
Now let's jump into tip number three. That directly relates to tip number two. In that wide stance, this is going to allow you to shuffle step. Now, this is really important because you want to make sure that you're moving the right way up at the non-volley zone line. So a lot of players, when they move left, they actually move their left foot first. Now, sometimes that might be okay for a little bit, but if we need to move laterally for the ball, we need to make sure that we're moving that right foot in first if we're moving left, and that left foot in first if we're moving right. So it's gonna look something like this, and that's what we call the shuffle step. So we have many videos on this. Go out there and practice that. This is what's gonna look like. Here we go. Okay, so doing this is going to get that contact point more in front of your hips, more in front of you, so that you can hit a better quality ball. So make sure you practice that.
Okay, tip number four is to always move with the ball. Being stationary in pickleball can get you in a lot of trouble, especially when you're playing against more aggressive players. So as you are hitting your ball, you should always be following your ball. Same goes for your partner or your opponent. If they're hitting the ball, you should always be moving with it, never just always coming back to middle or just standing here. All right, should look something like this. Tip number five, were you guys expecting Jordan? Well, surprise, it's me. Tip number five is to use your lower body more on your baseline shots, like your serve, your drops, your drives, instead of relying on just your arm or your shoulder. So in this case, if you watch any sports player, like a football player who's throwing a football or a baseball player who's trying to hit a home run, it always requires your hips. So in this case, when I'm hitting these baseline shots, I want to rely more on my lower body and my hips instead of just this upper body of my arm or my shoulder or even just a little bit of my chest. So relying on these big guys to gain your power and consistency on these shots.
Really quick, if you're watching this video, statistics say that 8 out of 10 of you watching are between that 3.0 and 3.5 level. I just created a 5-part video series called Breaking the 3.5 Barrier, and you can access it for free. All you have to do is go to the description below, click on the link, put in your email, and we'll send you exactly what you need to do step by step to get to that 4.0 level. Now, let's get right back to the video. All right, tip number 6. It's really important that you work on controlling the ball and work on your soft game. Obviously, it's really fun to hit the ball hard, especially if you're coming from other racket sports or other sports, but it's really important that we learn how to control the ball with touch and control. All right, so make sure you work on your dinks. So here, Kaden and I are at the net, and we are working on hitting the ball really softly so that ball lands in front of our opponent. And one just quick bonus tip here, 6B, is to have a very, very short stroke and not actually hit the ball rather than just lift the ball. So that's what I want you working on. If you are popping up the ball consistently, when you're up here, you're probably just hitting it way too hard. So as you can see, Kaden and I are just hitting the ball really, really softly and our swings are super short and super small.
Tip number 7 is to focus on your placement instead of just hitting the ball over the net. So in this case, I see a lot of players kind of just having the goal in mind of getting the ball over the net. I want you to now focus on where you're trying to place this ball to possibly put your opponents in an awkward position. I'm gonna focus on putting this ball on Jordan's left foot just to make him possibly hit a backhand, but that could be different for who you're playing against, and you should always be working on putting this ball in a specific spot. If you miss it by a little bit, that's okay. We just have to make little adjustments from there.
All right. All right, tip number 8, learn how to reset or soften the ball when the ball is coming very hard or very fast at you. This is a really important skill as you progress in levels. This is something that you're going to be learning and practicing. But just to start, it is really important that we understand the basic concept of slowing the ball down. So when I see most players trying to slow the ball down, they are actually just hitting the ball, right? When energy is coming in and you have energy going out, that is not going to translate in slowing down the ball. The biggest key thing when we talk about slowing down the ball is keeping your paddle stable and not having a lot of energy into the ball. So Caden's gonna hit me a couple of medium pace balls, and I understand these aren't super fast, but hopefully it's going to show you what we need to do to actually slow the ball down to get it in front of our opponent. Okay, here we go, Caden.
Forehand.
Okay. All right. So there, the ball's coming in a little bit faster, right? But I'm able to slow it down because my paddle is really stable and I'm not putting a ton of energy back. So if you are in a lot of points where you're trying to slow it down, but in reality, you are actually hitting and swinging at the ball, then you're not going to be able to slow it down. So this is what you need to practice.
Okay, tip number 9 is to focus on the depth of your shots. So personally, when I'm up here at the kitchen line or even back at the baseline, I'm not aiming inside the kitchen or in this non-volley zone. I'm usually aiming for my opponent's feet or the kitchen line. And that kind of gives me a better idea of where I'm trying to aim my shot. On top of that, it forces a little bit more pressure on my opponents because they either have to make a decision of taking it in the air or maybe taking a big step back and letting that ball bounce. People are not always super comfortable taking the ball in the air, so a dink on that kitchen line or a dink at their feet can force a lot of pressure on your opponents.
Tip number 10, this is a really important one. As you are getting better and gaining more experience on the court, you are going to realize some of the holes or the weaknesses in your game. So one important thing is to realize what those are and actually start practicing them. A lot of players, what I see is they actually try to just avoid all those by running around it or trying to play a certain game style to avoid a particular shot. But if you are struggling with something, make sure that you put in the time and the practice to practice it. So in this case, let's say my volleys, my backhand volley in particular is very weak. I'm gonna go out there with a partner, with a friend, and I'm going to drill or practice my backhand volleys because this is where I want to strengthen my game. So here we go, Caden. Okay, so whatever it is, it could be that, it could be a third shot drop, whatever you think that you need help in, make sure you go out there and practice it. All right, tip number 11, this is a really important one, especially when we are up at the non-volley zone line. So we talked about dinking already. One of the important things that you want to be thinking as a player is to look for the volley or look to volley the ball first. Why is this really important? Well, you take more time away from your opponent when you're volleying the ball. And also you don't want to just be stepping back on every single shot because you're going to be retreating off that non-volley zone line. So here's the caveat. If you can take the ball in a balanced position where you're not stretching or overreaching, then I want you to take that as a volley. All right, so that's what we're gonna be looking at right now. All right, Caden's gonna hit me some balls here. Okay, that's pretty comfortable. There we go. If I can't take it out of the air, then it's okay. Then I'm just gonna create some space. So here we go. Okay, so really important, key important thing up at the line, but especially when you are playing and trying to keep opponents back. And that's exactly what we're gonna talk about next.
Tip number 12 is to always move your opponents back. If you can push them backwards and get their momentum going the opposite way of you, that is always a good sign. So a good indicator for where you're trying to aim your shot is at their feet, of course, but you don't ever really want to just place the ball in front of them for them to move forward and hit a good shot. So I'm going to be trying to apply pressure to Jordan here, keep him back and make him hit as many shots back there as I possibly can.
All right, tip number 13. Now, this is probably one of the most important tips, but the most difficult one at the same time. Find a partner in a drill. Now, every single time I work with a player or I talk to players who I am encouraging them to actually practice their game, they find it really difficult to find a drilling partner. It's actually pretty easy. Here's how it goes. Hey man.
What's up?
Want to drill sometime? I'll give you $5.
Make it 10. Got a deal.
Cool. All right, let's drill, dude.
Let's do it.
Every Tuesday and Thursdays at 3 o'clock?
Dude, yeah, I love getting better at pickleball.
All right, let's go.
Oh, no.
No, seriously, it could really be difficult to find a drilling partner, but really find somebody that you really gel with, that's really cool and you're cool with. And the big important thing is that you're both just trying to improve. It doesn't have to be fancy. Even if it's 15, 20 minutes at a time, go out there and practice your game.
Tip number 14 is to take a step back to create space. What is space? Well, it's our contact point in front of our body, so we can always see where we're making contact with the shot on top of being able to see where our opponents are. A lot of players do get jammed up, whether it's at the kitchen line or back at the baseline or even in transition. So this step back to create a little bit of space is just to clean up that contact point so you're a little bit more consistent with your shots. Now in that case, I could take some of those in the air, but if you're not quite comfortable with that yet, that big step back should give you more space and time to react and hit that shot.
Tip number 15, give yourself space on the return. Now this is a really simple one, but I see so many players make a mistake on this and do this all the time. Especially when you are dealing with players with really strong serves, it's going to be very, very difficult to get your momentum moving forward and also to get your contact point in front of you if you're standing right on the line. So against good servers, make sure to give yourself adequate room. And my return position is going to be something like this against really good servers like Caden. Okay, so make sure that you create that necessary space that you need to. It's going to help you get your momentum moving in because that's where you want to be after you return the ball. Tip number 16, stop aiming for the sidelines. Now, what does that mean? There's nothing wrong with me hitting balls near the sideline. It's no problem, right? If I'm trying to get to my opponent's backhand or I'm trying to keep it next to the sideline, but so many players actually aim for the line. How crazy is that, right? If you aim for the line and you miss your mark a little bit, then of course you are going to hit the ball out or hit the ball wide many, many times. So one important thing is to move your targets in a little bit. So if I am, let's say, dinking here with Caden and I'm trying to get to his backhand, I'm gonna make sure that I aim over there, but my target is actually a foot or two inside the sideline. And that's really important. At lower levels, I see too many times. I mean, there's probably half the points that are errors because they are going for too much, and one of the ways they do that is they go too close to the sideline.
Okay, tip number 17 is contact is your key to success in pickleball. What do I mean by that? Well, your contact point is in front of your body, in front of your hips, and typically you should be able to see where you're making contact with the ball, as well as where your opponents are at and what the heck they're doing. So when I'm hitting my dinks or my transition or my drops or my drives, I should always have this contact point in mind. A good indicator for me is using my opposite hand and sticking that baby out so I can see exactly where I'm making my contact with these shots, all right? I'm gonna show you how to do it right now. So as you could tell in those examples, I used my left hand and it is a little bit in the way, but it does show me a nice bright picture of where I need to be hitting that ball. And as you can tell, the more out in front of your body you are, the more consistent you'll be. So give it a try. Tip number 18 is don't run around all your backhands, okay? Typically you can get away with maybe hiding this little weakness of yours, but as you play higher level players, you are going to get exposed. Because if I'm noticing that my opponent doesn't like to hit their backhand, guess what I'm going to do? I'm gonna put it there with a little bit more pressure, or I'm gonna put it a little bit wider to get them out of position. So work on those backhand shots if you're not comfortable with them. Oh.
Tip number 19, go for a bigger serve and practice a stronger serve. Lots of players coming into the game. Obviously, it's very, very important to get your serve in, but over time, we need to start developing something very offensive on our first shot of the point, our serve. So many players at lower levels, it's totally fine if you just are learning the game and want to get the ball in, but eventually we need to develop something really, really strong. So what I would really encourage you to do is go out there and practice your serve. We have a lot of videos. You can go check those out on our channel on how to improve your serve, but it's a really important thing to start serving bigger and bigger. All right, tip number 20, and that is get comfortable in the transition zone. As you play higher and higher level players, they are going to force difficult shots at you as you are moving up to the non-volley zone. So one important thing is to actually get some practice in here. I can have a partner just feed me balls kind of in front of me so that at least I get comfortable with hitting the ball from this far back, right, which is halfway back, but I'm trying to actually get the ball to dive down at my opponent's feet. And then what you're going to start doing is learning how to reset the ball really well. So then he's going to be hitting balls more at my feet, and I'm going to actually have to learn how to take the ball out of the air and try to do my best, at least, to keep the ball down so that he's not smashing the ball from up here. So whatever level you are at, it is really important to start practicing a lot here so that you can get comfortable, so that when you move up to higher levels, it will be a piece of cake.
Tip 21, if you've made it to this point, props to you because you are going to be a better pickleball player. Tip 21 is to slow your swing down when you are trying to hit the ball slower. I see way too many players just swing to swing, and in this case, when you are trying to hit the ball a little bit more precise and to slow that ball down, you do have to slow your body and your swing down to get what you are trying to do. So in this case, I'm in transition zone here. I'm going to be trying to work on my reset. So because I'm trying to reset this ball, I need to make sure that my swing is slower. Here we go. So as you could tell, The faster swing got me in a little bit more trouble. The slower swing allowed me to take pace off that ball and be a little bit more precise. So congratulations, everybody. Those are your 21 tips to improve your pickleball game. If you do use these, you will see improvement. So get after it. We'll see you in the next video.